We need to treat this as an urgent briefing. What we're about to break down is a series of events surrounding the killing of an inmate, Robert Brooks, inside a New York State prison. His death didn't just expose a few rogue officers, it put an entire system on trial. And the evidence, well, it's absolutely damning.
We have to start right here with these words from Robert Brooks's son. He said this in court, directly to one of the men who killed his father. It's a powerful reminder that this isn't just a case file or a news story. This is a family's tragedy. And his words, a horror movie, are chillingly accurate, especially when you find out what was captured on camera.
So that leaves us to the one central question that everything else revolves around. An inmate was beaten to death by the very people paid to guard him. How on earth does something like that happen? It seems like a simple question, but the answer is deeply, deeply disturbing. To find it, we've got to look at the crime, the people involved, and the alarms that were ringing for years and that everyone ignored. Okay, first up, let's just lay out the facts of the crime itself. We're going to walk through the final brutal hours of Robert Brooks's life, pulling directly from official reports, and crucially, the video evidence. So on the evening of December 9th, 2024, Robert Brooks gets transferred to Marcy Correctional Facility. And get this, the official reason for the transfer was for his safety. But just hours after arriving, he's in the prison infirmary in handcuffs being brutally beaten. By the next morning, he was dead. And the most unbelievable part, they recorded themselves doing it. 4 officers apparently forgot their body cams were in standby mode, which passively records video just without the audio. The footage shows Brooks handcuffed, not resisting. It shows him getting punched and kicked over and over again. You see an officer grab him by the neck and haul him off a table. And then, in a moment of just shocking depravity, 2 of them try to throw his limp, unresponsive body out of a window. This wasn't a fight that got out of hand. This was deliberate, calculated violence. The medical examiner's report leaves absolutely no room for doubt. The ruling was homicide. The cause of death lines up perfectly with the horror show on that video. Compression of the neck and multiple blunt force injuries. The evidence was overwhelming. So you might be wondering, was this just a shocking one-time explosion of violence? A few guys who snapped? Not even close. When you start digging, you find out this wasn't an isolated incident at all. It was part of a clear and really disturbing pattern. Now, a number of officers were held accountable, and honestly, this level of accountability is almost unheard of in these kinds of cases. David Kingsley was convicted of second-degree murder, 25 years to life. You can see 4 others, including Nicholas Anzalone and Anthony Farina, pleaded guilty to manslaughter, with some getting very long sentences. And here's where that pattern gets crystal clear. For some of these officers, like Anzalone and Farina, this wasn't their first time being accused of this stuff. They'd been named in other brutality lawsuits before. One lawsuit actually claimed they were part of a beat-up squad at Marcy. I mean, think about that phrase. The writing was on the wall, in court documents for anyone who cared to look. So if the individual officers had a known history of violence, what about the prison itself? Well, it turns out the state had been explicitly warned about Marcy Correctional Facility long before Robert Brooks was even sent there. More than a year before the murder, back in October 2022, an independent watchdog group called the Correctional Association of New York put out a report on Marcy. And reading it now, it feels less like a report and more like a prophecy. The report found everything you'd need to create a disaster. Widespread violence by staff against inmates. Racially motivated abuse specifically targeting Black inmates. And if an inmate tried to file a complaint, forget it. The grievance process was completely broken. So the most important point here is that the system knew. The warnings were all there, in black and white. You'd hope that a toxic culture like the one at Marcy would at least be contained within its own walls. But that's not what happened. It was more like a contagion, a virus that was spreading outside the prison, carried by the staff themselves. Just a few months after Robert Brooks was killed, it happened again. Another inmate, Messiah Nantwi, was beaten to death, this time at the prison right next door. The connection? When investigators started looking at persons of interest in that case, 5 of them were officers from Marcy. I mean, just look at this. Side by side. 2 men, 2 different prisons, same horrific outcome, just months apart. And the common thread running through both? Staff from Marcy. In fact, 2 of those 5 Marcy employees were eventually charged with manslaughter in Messiah Nantwi's death. This wasn't just a problem at one facility. It was a culture that was being exported. So when you put all of these pieces together, the crime, the pattern of abuse, the ignored warnings, the fact that it was spreading, you arrive at a verdict. And that verdict isn't just about a few officers. It's about an entire system at a breaking point. A legal analyst named Joseph Margolis said it perfectly after he watched the video of the murder. He said, "You cannot watch them and pretend this is a story about a few bad apples." And he's right. It's not just about the men who threw the punches. What about the other 15 or so officers who were there and did nothing? That's how you know this behavior wasn't shocking. It was normalized. So this is what that culture looks like. It's a 4-step recipe for murder. Step 1, you dehumanize people. Step 2, violence becomes routine, unremarkable. Step 3, a code of silence ensures no one ever talks. And step 4, a system of impunity makes sure no one is ever really held accountable. This formula didn't just make Robert Brooks's murder possible, it made it predictable. And that brings us to the end of this briefing. The facts are on the table, the warnings were ignored, the cost was human life. The only question left for legislators, for the public, for all of us, is this. Now that you know, what happens next?